Wuthering Heights is out and people are not loving it, to say the least.
I think they just wanted to make a vibey fan fiction smut film based on the SparkNotes version of Wuthering Heights.
I'm so sad if I'm the one who has to tell you this first, but Wuthering Heights was so bad.
Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights is one of the worst literary adaptations I've ever seen in my life, and to sum it up, Emerald thought she was making Romeo and Juliet.
What a stupid film.
I haven't seen the film yet. I intentionally wanted to make this video before I see the film because I didn't want whether the film is good or not to affect what I'm going to say, and you will get that in a moment. But yeah, so I will be seeing the film and I'll also be buying it to own. I'm not yet sure because I've been buying my movies through Prime and I realized I can only access my movies if I have Prime, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm not doing that anymore, so I'll see if I can find a way to own it, maybe on CD, because I got a DVD player, and yeah, or whatever is the best alternative. Yes, and obviously this is controversial. You've seen what people think about that, and some of those reasons are valid and incredibly sensitive, so I'm not just trying to say those things are invalid. I'm just saying that I have a reason that I think is valid. Wow, it's like a shot every time I say that one, valid or invalid. Yeah, and I think the reasons I have are also just as valid, and just hear me out even though you hated or you loved the film. So first of all, before we get into that, I think I just want to voice, like, there are things that I think are wrong with the film, and if you don't care about this, you can skip ahead to the point where I defend my seemingly radical decision to watch the film. But before we get to that, let me explain what I find wrong. Obviously, the first thing is Heathcliff's casting. Now, I read this book ages ago, maybe 15 years ago when I was still a teenager, and I wouldn't say I remember everything about the book, but I do remember his skin being described as dark. That part I explicitly remember because I remember thinking, what does that mean? Because I didn't assume that in that time period people would be writing books considering people of color as romantic interests, which is somehow not very different from now, but you know, I digress. Anyway, and it's not just me. Seen lots of English lit creators. I do love bookish creators, and they all agree the same, that he was described as a dark-skinned man. Now, I did look online and it says he was described as a gypsy, which was a word used to describe sailors from Southeast Asia, India, and, you know, with darker complexions. I'm not an expert in that, I'm just telling you what I found, but one thing I am sure of in the edition that I read is that he was described as a dark-skinned man. In the big old 2025 6, it's a bit difficult to imagine why someone would miscast this, and she is not the first one to do this miscasting. There's only one Wuthering Heights that I know of that had a black man in it, which was one that came out in 2011. I'm actually going to say it, and I do have to say I think this is the biggest of the crimes. It's not just about a miscasting. Obviously, stories evolve, they can take on new shapes and new forms, but a huge point of Heathcliff's mistreatment was about his race. And yeah, you can say that someone can still be mistreated while being a Caucasian person, but in those times the race would be so different, you know. Right now, if a boss can be mean to me, and a boss can be mean to a white person, and the experience might not be that different, but in those days, you best believe the experience was that different. Like, it's so foundational, it's so important to the story that I truly don't understand why she would take this out. And if she did, I would assume she would have either a much better casting of, even though a white actor, at the very least an unknown actor. But it just feels like she wanted to cast Jacob Elordi in this film, which might be explained by the fact that he worked in Soap, which was amazing. I liked Soap. Like, it was an entertaining film, it was a memorable film, it was a moment. Like, I love seeing people's TikToks about it. I think it was a fun film. Talented Mr. Ripley is one of my favorite films, and honestly, I have to be honest, I didn't even see the connection in the start, except when I was like 2 days later. I'm like, wait, this is an exact ripple. So I would guess that's why she chose to cast Jacob Elordi. But besides him obviously not being a person of color, it just seems a little bit weird that he would personally not be my choice as the casting for Heathcliff, even though they did choose to cast a white guy. Yeah, beyond Heathcliff, if Heathcliff's casting wasn't about race, honestly, Cathy's might even be worse. Margot Robbie is hands down one of the most beautiful women I've ever laid eyes on the screen. I don't know what she looks like in real life. She is so beautiful. Like, her beauty cannot be ignored, but nor can her sensuality. Catherine is meant to be, as far as I remember, innocent, sweet girl who by the way dies as a teenager, and that is also key to the story, you know? I am not saying Margot Robbie looks old for the role. I'm saying Margot Robbie looks mature for the role. It's like casting, I don't know, Sofia Vergara, who I also think is one of the most, like, she's like a whip-on. She's like a mass, you know? Like, she is so beautiful, it's almost unbelievable. It's like casting her as one of the Von Trapp children, other than, of course, for obvious reasons. She has never looked like a child. Like, these are her pictures from her when she was 21, and she has just never looked like that person. Neither is Salma Hayek. Like, some women are just too sensual that they cannot pull off that, you know, vibe. And if Elle Fanning, I'm not sure how old she is right now, but if you cast her in that same role, despite her not also being the age of the actual age of that person, like, she just has that look, that sweet, innocent look that's going to immerse you in the story, and you're not going to forget that, oh, this is a sweet, innocent little child who's being, you know, damaged, who's being stained by this experience. When I look at Margot Robbie, for me, she looks like an experienced woman. Apparently, there's a scene in a movie where she's supposed to be astounded by this, you know, scene, and it would be hard for me to believe this is what Margot Robbie looked like at 20 to 23 when she filmed Wolf of Wall Street. And when I found out she was 22, I did not believe it then, because I thought she was like 31 or 30. A beautiful, hot 31, but still a 31, you know? Sofia Vergara is a Von Trapp child. Imagine her singing that song of I am 16.
I am 16, going on 17. I know that I'm naive.
I really should let this go, but my point still stands that forget the fact that she's obviously brown skin and this was a European family. She is just too striking, too piercing to be singing around I am 16 going around 17 with a, what's this boy? Oh my god, I just realized that. I've watched this film like 15 times. Anyway, yeah. I know that's going to be a huge problem for me. I was going to read the book before watching the film. I actually realized if I read the book right before I see the film, it would completely be ruined by Catherine's casting, because I also do remember explicitly Catherine being described who she is as a young, sweet, little, innocent, untouched, untainted flower. Now, Margot Robbie is beautiful, perhaps maybe even too beautiful. It's just hard to ignore her and a very perfect 2020s face in a period piece. Now, just like I mentioned that Emerald might have cast Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff because they worked in soap band together, it's even more evident by the fact that Margot Robbie is Catherine, because Margot Robbie produced soap band, in case you didn't know. So it just looks like, I mean, this is what I imagine went on in whatever it is they were doing. Margot was probably standing there with Jake, having breakfast, and she just go, hey Jake, how cool would it be if we made a Wuthering Heights? And then Jacob is like, that would be really cool. Oh my god, can you imagine? Oh wait, they're Australian. Sorry, I can't do an Australian accent. Margot goes, oh yeah, unfortunately we need lots of connections and lots of money to do that. Like, yeah, probably it would be too expensive, so we cannot definitely do that. Oh yeah, I really wish. Emerald walking by, going to get her coffee. It's like, oh, what would be too expensive to make? Wuthering Heights with Margot as Catherine and me as Heathcliff. I mean, I know he's described as a person of colour, but, you know, don't worry about that. No one cares about that. I certainly don't. We can do this. If money is the only problem, I'm willing if you guys want to. And we ended up with what we ended up with. Finally, Emerald's admission that she made the movie for herself. Don't shoot me. But I don't have a problem with this. At the end of the day, when someone goes out to make a movie, an adaptation, it is how they interpreted it, whether they say it or not. Now, of course, they do take into account audience feedback and what the studios that are financing the films are willing to invest in, but it's kind of unspoken that when someone makes a film, they are making it in the way that they understand it. So I do not have a problem with this. And besides, male filmmakers have said this exact same thing. Not exact, but they say this thing when they're making adaptations. There are adaptations that have been marketed as X's reimagination, rendition of whatever, of Y, and no one ever had a problem with that. Obviously, the way in which she said it, this is for my 14-year-old self, is maybe not as, you know, is not the most polite word to put it.
I think my 14-year-old self, for whom I made this film, would love it. I think she'd lose her mind, and that's always my hope. And then, you know, there's a lot of wish fulfillment in this movie. There are a lot of things that I desperately wanted and needed and physically craved to happen in the book that didn't happen. And so the wonderful thing about making film is you can make those things happen. And so, yeah, that has been wonderful. It's been very cool.
What did 14-year-old Emerald make of the book?
Well, 14-year-old Emerald is sort of similar to 40-year-old Emerald, which is that she's
you know, little slut.
But she would have probably said, I'm making a film for a 14-year-old girl, the one I see myself in, and blah, 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 blah. But with also the tone of the film takes, I don't know, everything falls apart. Stylistically, I hate it. However, morally, ethically, I do not see anything wrong with this, as it is implied when someone makes a film. This is the imagination of how things happened. So, unfortunately, this is not an issue for me. I also think maybe if she wanted to reimagine it, she could have named it something slightly different, or overall different, and not Wuthering Heights, and just say inspired by Wuthering Heights, and not just try to make the story the way it is without actually making it the way it actually is, which feels a bit lazy, honestly, if you ask me. Anyway, finally, why I don't like the film, it's a remake. I've been off remakes for like 2 years. I was like, I'm not giving an original story my money anymore. But again, I'm going to say this, and I'm just about to explain why. So, reason number one that I'm going to watch this film is actually this silly thing that I realized, that in many cases, when a woman or a person of color gets power, they just get invested in their career for obvious reasons, like they've done it against all odds. I find it inspiring, but more I just get intrigued by them and just start following their careers. I've gotten to a point where it is inevitable that whenever a woman / person of color gets to this level of fame or success, I just hold my breath for their mini cancellation or mini takedown, because it's almost guaranteed. And that's when it occurred to me that people hold women and people of color in power to much higher standards than their white male counterparts, which is absolutely sickening to me. The example I can think of is Shonda Rhimes. Lately, I've seen so much content and so much critiques of how she casts a person of color as a lead. Even when she casts a person of color as a lead in her show, she'll always cast them coupled with a white counterpart. Saying Candia and Bridgerton season 2, which is when I tapped out, but I think it happens in Bridgerton season 4 as well. Anyway, so I've seen this critique multiple times, and it's directed at her.
All of these interracial couples in Bridgerton, I love it. Obviously, I love it. But I can't help.
Because one thing Shonda Rhimes gonna do, she gonna give you an interracial couple with a white lead. Every time.
Every night at dinner, I'll be there. Every birthday party, I'll be there. Every Christmas, I'll be there.
And I thought I was tripping, but then I started to see the same thing about Mindy Kaling, because she did the same thing in what's that show, Mindy Project, and obviously Never Have I Ever. And this is a valid criticism, because it definitely shows that audiences or studios will only tolerate a person of color as a lead if they're associated, married to, engaged to, dating a white person, which obviously is not right. I'm not excusing this. What I'm saying is Shonda Rhimes and Mindy Kaling should not be the face of casting undiverse leads or undiverse casts in general. Shonda Rhimes gave us the first dark-skinned South Asian woman on screen as a lead, as a romantic lead, not some tragic story, and really made it a beautiful love story that everyone loved, along all races, classes, interests, everyone loved that. Shonda Rhimes should be the face of that. And while how she's doing it is not the most ideal way, she should certainly not be the face. I don't know if you heard of the Cutting Room Floor, which is a fashion podcast. I don't listen to the podcast, but I do see their TikTok sometimes. And so basically she went viral. I'm always a New York drama, guys. Sometimes I feel like spiritually I'm a New Yorker. I don't know if I would have great honestly to survive there, but I digress. But this girl posted a job, I think for an assistant, maybe 55,000. I'll confirm, I'll put all the info up here. And people went in on her. You're a person of color, you know this, you're a woman, blah 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 blah. Are they wrong? Absolutely not. Should she be paying people more? It's unbelievable that 55k is not enough money for an assistant in the UK, while 55k is considered great money here for people at literal director levels of management. Anyway, shitty London salaries. And I remember someone made a TikTok and said, while this woman is not wrong, she's wrong, we cannot make her the face of low wages in the fashion industry. And I definitely agree with that. We have known for decades that Vogue does not pay their models. No one has ever spoken out about it. No one has ever said anything. And once this one who is just trying to build her business does the same thing, not that she's right, she should pay people fairly, she is plastered everywhere in news publications, being slammed for paying someone 55k, while Vogue has people working for free or sometimes not even paying them. Vogue magazine, the biggest fashion publication in the world, is not paying people, but God forbid, a black girl with a little podcast is underpaying her assistant. Still wrong. My point is, she should not be the face of that. Anna Wintour should be. Sorry, Anna, but no, maybe that's not right to say. But we take these systemic issues and plaster them on the people who have defied them, instead of plastering them on the people who uphold them or even enforce them. And that's what I'm saying here. Mindy Kaling, Shonda Rhimes should not be the face of undiverse casting. This girl from the cutting room floor, whose name I don't know, should not be the face of unpaid or low-paying wages in the fashion industry. And Emerald Fennell should most certainly not be the face of poor casting, fanfic insertions, and inaccurate adaptations. Just to be clear, these are Shonda Rhimes' leads, and these are Christopher Nolan's leads. And no one's ever said anything about Nolan. Look at all the leads he has in Inception. They're all white, all male, all brunettes. They all have the same jawline, and no one bites an eyelash. I dislike this movie, but lots of people love this film. And he did not get any flack for that, but Shonda should. Now, Emerald Fennell did not do any better in this film, but she did something wrong, and I think we should give her that room to come out and say, I should have thought about this, and moving forward, I will do this differently. Something like that. Let's give her time to redeem herself, because there are men who have done this and have had the opportunity to redeem themselves, and they haven't. The second point is, again on this point, is that when a woman or a person of color does succeed, is we have these expectations that they're a better person just because they are female or woman of color. But I think there's an element we are forgetting. There are certain traits that we reward with success in our society. Literal sociopathy, selfishness, being self-centered, being a narcissist, thinking of yourself, putting yourself first, thinking you're better than others. Those are people that make it on top, even in the corporate world, right? And I'm again not excusing this behavior. What I'm saying is, just because a person is a woman or a person of color, it is not unlikely that these idols that we look forward to, that we look up to just because they look like us, have these traits as well. There is a certain level of self-obsession that you have to make it to certain heights, and selfishness and self-centeredness that you need to have before you can progress in certain careers, and entertainment is one of those. Again, to repeat, I am not excusing this behavior. What I'm saying is, let's not act shocked, and let's not penalize the people who are least advantaged in these positions, and leave the people who are safe, cushioned, and would have less to lose in this situation if they spoke up about these issues, and instead of going to the easier targets first. Finally, is Fennell's Fennell, I don't know how to say her name, but comes up a lot in why people don't engage with her work. And while I get that, I'm not sure the film industry is where you want to look if you want to see working class people make art. I'm not too sure. I am not too sure about that. Most great filmmakers came either from film families or had massive advantage, especially here in Britain. There's a creator I follow who always says that music is the working class profession and that acting is the more higher class profession, which is why you see a lot of musicians try to act like Ariana Grande, Harry Styles, just to kind of be more artsy, I guess, like to be more polished, like to polish up their image. And I do see the point that she's making, which also emphasizes the one I'm making right now. Now, Fennell is not ideal. Is not the ideal female director that we want. However, there is absolutely no way we're going to get to that ideal female director that we are looking for without first going through a few Emerald Fennells. That's just how things work. What's that saying? You gotta dig through the dirt to get the diamond. I guess in this case you gotta dig through a few emeralds to get the diamond. No system works perfectly the first way. In the same way I said before that our systems reward self-centered and narcissism while giving people success, our systems, especially in acting and film production, rewards wealthy people first, as they can just afford to blunder around until something hits with the general public. It rewards people who come from wealthy backgrounds. Therefore, if a woman or person of color makes it in that industry, it is still just as likely as it would be for a white male director, producer, actor to be rich as it is for a person of color or a female person to also come from a rich background. And one day we will get to that point where we have a middle class or even lower class, or even someone that came out of poverty making it to the top and giving us stories that are introspective, that have depth, that have that rigor, that have that grit of knowing what it means to put food on the table. But that day is not today, and that day can be tomorrow, but only if we get the emeralds today and get them out of the way fast. So the faster we put actually Emerald on top, hopefully the faster she can get someone to mentor, the faster she can employ someone, the faster she can collaborate with other female filmmakers and give us that filmmaker that we're looking for. But it is not by popping Emerald down and then replacing her with this ideal female director that we're looking for. It is by propping Emerald that she is there to support this ideal female director that we are looking for, that we are going to get that female director that we're looking for. Things have to happen in stages. We just talked about Sound of Music, where they cast as a character that wouldn't fly today, and yet that's still a beloved movie God knows how many years later, and that wouldn't fly today. That means we need to get through some stages on what we consider normal, what we consider acceptable, until we get to that ideal stage. I'm not excusing her behavior. What I'm saying is, when you make an attack on her, or a criticism, let's not call this attacks, no one is attacking anyone. When you make a criticism of Emerald, make them towards Emerald, the filmmaker, but not Emerald the person, not Emerald's background, not Emerald's class, not Emerald's gender, not Emerald's lack of class awareness. Make them towards her as a filmmaker. Ideally, maybe even criticize her a little bit less. Save some of that criticism from Christopher Nolan's Odyssey that's coming out later in the year, because he can take that hit and he's going to be fine. If Emerald gets 2 flops at the box office, she's not going to get funding. These movies take millions of dollars to make. Wuthering Heights was what, $40-50 million to make? Someone needs to give her that money. And if we don't watch her movies, if we don't buy her movies at the box office, if you don't support her at the box office, that money is gone. And that money is going to go in a far less risky, more safe male director that everyone knows about. And then we'll go back to, oh no, we don't have female directors, which is not what we want. Unless someone outright comes out and makes the most diabolical mistakes and refuses to learn from them. I mean, I'm hoping this woman is seeing all this criticism and makes better casting choices. And at this point, I'm choosing to give her the benefit of the doubt, like we do with male creators. Everyone just accepts Tarantino's foot fetish like it's a normal thing and watches his movies. I love that guy. But do you think a woman would survive with, I don't know, a bicep fetish in the film industry and be one of the most revered directors of all time? I don't think so. And I think we should give some of that foot fetish grace to female directors. Anyway, this already exists as the Substack, but I think the video has way more details, so there's no point in reading that if I'm being honest, but I've got other interesting articles on there if you would like to see that. And I will see the film. I'll not make a film review because I'm not a film reviewer, but I'll have some notes on my TikTok, maybe on Substack as well. I enjoyed filming this. I'll see you.